It's Carl again here with another video. And in this video today, I'm going to go over the portfolio that I presented to land my six-figure product design salary. And before I dive into the portfolio, I just wanted to make a note that I did use a very, very long Google Doc to help me write the script for presenting this portfolio. And this Google Doc basically has an outline, but it really has every single sort of script and line that I practiced and rehearsed with myself. And granted, I did make this last year in 2021. And so my current familiarity with the portfolio is probably a little bit low, but I'm going to give it my best shot in this video, and hopefully this is helpful and y'all sort of get a sense of what a senior product design portfolio presentation is like. So, hi again, my name's Carl with a K. I'm a product designer based in Philly, and I'm really excited about this role at Acme Company. So today I have 4 things I wanted to cover. First, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'll describe exactly what is Attentive, my current employer, dive into my 2 case studies that I prepared, and end with my final pitch. So let's talk about me. A little bit about myself. I'm a product designer with 5 years of experience as a consultant and at 3 startups. And I'm also a podcast host. The podcast focuses on Asian American mental health. We release 12 episodes on topics like grief, emotions, and identity, and we being me and my wife, Rachel. And then I'm also a father in that my 4-month-old Philippa is the main preoccupation these days, and used to have other hobbies, but I forget. These are some of my work values: collaboration by default, communicate to understand, start somewhere, narrow quickly. And these are sort of some of my operating principles, but basically collaboration by default. My true belief here is that the best solutions can come from anywhere in an org, not just design. And we should all work together because none of us can see the whole picture. And I really like this illustration of the young woman and the old woman. It's an optical illusion, and really depends on sort of your point of view and what you're seeing. And the whole point of this image is that it's worth identifying each other's strengths and learning how to improve as a team to sharpen our point of views. The second image here is a meme that I saw circulating on LinkedIn, which was funny. Basically, it's a game of visual drawing telephone, and the person at the very end who is coding draws something totally different than the person at the very front. And lastly, I've never done ice sculpting before, but this looks like a fun team bonding icebreaker maybe, or an exercise. Point of this being when we're just getting started with a project or product or a feature, my bias is to move quickly, to just get started, to just try something, and course correct and adapt as needed as we get more research, more insight, more information. Here's a high-level overview of how I work and my design process. I won't get into all of these, there's a lot here, but at high level, my approach is to understand, research, test, design, iterate, build, launch, and reflect. And I would ignore this little component here. It was quite finicky to solve. Okay, that covers me. Next, I want to jump into describing what is attentive. Any questions before I do that? All right, perfect. So Attentive's mission is to reinvent B2C communications in the mobile age, starting with SMS marketing. And Attentive as a product is specifically an SMS marketing platform helping 5,000 brands drive 20% of their online revenue. And Attentive makes money by delivering billions of messages per week to over 250 million subscribers and charges a fee for every message sent. So, how does it all work? Well, marketers use the web app to create and deploy pop ups, aka sign up units, on their websites. And sign up units are used to capture phone numbers. So, once a sign up unit is launched, a shopper can visit the website. They can basically enter their email, enter their phone number, and click this button. And then the message is automatically addressed to the right number, hit send, and then they automatically subscribe. And basically, at the end of the sign up experience, they're presented with a coupon code. And behind the scenes, the pop ups and sign up units are powered by something called the attentive tag, which is a small bit of JavaScript that is added to the HTML of every client website. And this tag tracks shopper behavioral events like page views, add to carts, purchases. After shoppers sign up to become subscribers, marketers can create one-time messages called campaigns to send to their subscribers. So this is a marketer in the web app in the campaigns tab crafting their first SMS campaign. They can also set up automated messages called journeys, which are triggered based on events, like when a shopper adds a product to the cart. And last, before I dive into case studies, I wanted to hit on 3 key terms that are really important for this industry, SMS marketing. The first being performance marketing, second being client strategy managers, and the third being Shopify. So performance marketing is basically the name of our industry. It's essentially where marketing dollars are carefully allocated between different channels to generate measurable returns. And our competitors include everyone from Facebook to Klaviyo, MailChimp, and PostScript. And then client strategy managers help our customers onboard and adopt Attentive. They're really like the heartbeat of the company in that they're product specialists. They often serve as embedded marketers for our clients. Last but not least, Shopify is an e-commerce platform preferred by the majority of our customers, especially tier 5 clients that spend less than $2,000 a year with Attentive. And Shopify is the big fish in the lake, and we were really just swimming in their pond. So any questions there before I jump into my case studies? No? Good. All right, case studies. So the first case study I have is Smart Recs. Answering the question, what should I do next for our SMS marketers? And this was a very, very quick proof of concept project that really only lasted 1 month, which was really cool. I also have another longer project that took the better half of a year that I can dive into as well. But between these two, I'll do Smart Recs first. So before I get into the case study, I really need to shout out my reports team, who really put the smart into the Smart Recs experiment. The folks in the dotted box here represent my immediate teammates, and then everyone else represented sort of the cross-functional stakeholders that I met with to get this proof of concept over the finish line. So the mission of the reports team was to provide accurate data, relevant insights, and meaningful guidance to our clients. And the goal here was to improve their overall attentive SMS program. But in February 2021, our product manager was fired, and we also took over the previously neglected dashboard. So as you can see in the Attentive web app, the dashboard tab is the tab that you see right when you log in, and the reports tab is the one here at the bottom. And so it's a really valuable piece of real estate to take ownership over. So we were excited about that, but we were also pretty bummed that our PM had been fired. So one of the first things in partnering with client strategy that they shared with us was this Looker dashboard. And Looker essentially had these insights where each row here represented a client and a red cell represented an underutilized feature or missed best practice, and a green cell represented sort of like the adoption. You can see there's a lot of red and yellow cells. So that was one input into the research that I did. Another thing I did was UX audit. So I audited the legacy dashboard tab, which hadn't been improved in months. But again, it's the first thing that marketers see when they log into Attentive. So for example, the bar charts had no y-axis labels, metrics were labeled inconsistently, the campaign sent table here was not really useful and redundant because you could actually see that by going to the campaigns tab. And really the only thing that was slightly useful was this reminder banner, which would appear if marketers did not recently schedule or send a campaign. And so quickly we came to sort of align and define our first problem here, which was that marketers fail to realize value with Attentive because they ignore several features and neglect best practices. And some supporting data here, 150 to 200 clients were launched weekly, and 40 to 50 clients were assigned per client specialist. So really, we were having this massive onboarding problem and not enough humans, not enough client specialists, client strategy managers to throw at this problem. And so we had a hypothesis, which was that if we provided clients with actionable guidance on how to optimize their SMS program via the dashboard, then we could expect clients to be more engaged and use more Attentive features. So we had two success metrics here, which was to improve overall dashboard engagement and increase the overall usage of the various messaging features. And we gave ourselves a timeline of 2 months to pull this off. So one of our goals was, okay, how do we demonstrate that in-app guidance and recommendations are useful and effective? And in parentheses, our secondary goal here was really to convince the business leadership to staff a dedicated team focused on solving client onboarding and platform adoption. So for context, Attentive historically had started with a lot of client strategists, and client strategy and having a white glove approach was really core to the DNA of the company. And so the company never really prioritized a true self-service onboarding experience from a product perspective. So after doing a lot of that research and the audit and defining the problem and the goals that we wanted to accomplish, I started to churn out a bunch of designs. And you can see here I had a number of different explorations, played around with this progress bar idea, this carousel idea, a bunch of cards iterations, even a tip of the day idea, just to kind of get the creative juices flowing. So I had like roughly 6 explorations. But the final solution that we picked was this carousel approach. And the main criteria that I used to select this approach were first and foremost personalized and relevant. So all these recommendations, I had the intuition that they would fail if they weren't relevant to the client. The second was visually prominent. So I did want to reuse this like hero um, splash area and make sure that it would grab the attention of someone who was just logging in. Third was communicative, instructive, digestible, transient, hideable, dismissible, and last but not least, mobile responsive. One piece of criteria that we did not nail on the head was this aspect of delightfulness or gamification. We were not able to build out sort of like a whole gamification system as part of the POC, which made sense given the time constraints of 2 months. This was the final list of recommendations that we came up with related to all the other messaging features in the web platform. And I worked really closely with the content strategist to sort of sell the sizzle for all of these words. And then I also worked with Eng, had a fantastic front-end Eng collaborator in Greg, who found a JavaScript library to help pull off the mobile responsiveness. We also use sneak previews in GitHub to check everything in dev before merging to prod. Notably, our experiment also coincided with a company-wide rebrand, which included a design systems refresh. So I worked really closely with my front-end Eng to inspect the new components as well. Okay, so some summary and takeaway results. So on Monday, April 19th, we shipped 11 recommendations to the dashboard for 2,100 clients with a 20% holdout group. So the holdout group was randomized, and we also had equal tier distribution. And by tier, I meant that various clients would be of different size based on their tier. So we tracked results for 2 weeks, and what we learned was the POC group actually had a slight percentage increase in implementations. Implementation being defined as actually executing a recommendation, and actually sent almost one extra message. And then in terms of engagement, we were measuring this with click-through rates. So originally the click-through rate of compose your message was at 6.1, and we had a lot more things to click, but you can see that people were very interested in aggregate. So the total click-through rate here was 16.3%. Granted, we definitely had some learnings here, which was that when you introduce more things to click, it sort of dilutes the clicks, the specific targets. So you can see that a 6.1% of the original compose your message button outperformed the get started and learn more. And I have some more takeaways too later. But we were able to use a tool called Heap to track results over the next month and form hypotheses about what we could do to improve the numbers. So for example, what we were really proud of, however, is that journey recommendations had a 32% conversion rate. So basically anyone who clicked a recommendation, a third of the folks roughly ended up actually creating a journey. And then for campaigns, something like 2/3 of the people who clicked a recommendation ultimately composed and sent a campaign. And then down here, the aggregate number of clicks for all recs over two weeks, you can see that there was a natural downward trend line, which makes sense because we only had a finite number of recommendations, and the dips here were on the weekends. It was also really enlightening to watch recorded footage using a tool called Full Story to see where marketers got stuck. So for example, several marketers started to create a journey, but then they gave up before they finished. And so we used this footage to kind of come up with more hypotheses about what we could do to guide marketers. In terms of the final takeaways, we launched this on June 15th, 2021 to our entire client base. So we did eventually make the decision to go live in GA this feature. And we automated a bunch of manual processes, added much more recommendations, and we were able to ultimately demonstrate a boost in engagement usage. We took an underutilized part of our UI and turned it into a revenue driver. And a big win here too was that we were able to convince our product leadership to dedicate an entire team focused on solving for client onboarding and platform adoption. And these are just some of the comments from the client strategists who are super happy and excited about this feature. Okay, here's like a late night conversation I had with myself on some takeaways here. So first, I asked myself, wait a minute, how often do users even log in on a weekly basis? Because the login, the number of logins on a weekly basis would sort of serve as a engagement denominator, or at least a cap, and that would help us kind of consider what is an actual reasonable engagement rate for SmartRecs, right? Because if they only logged in, say, like once a week, and they clicked several SmartRecs, then that would kind of speak more volumes about their overall behavior. Also, carousels can be a terrible UX, and I found this website that was basically suggesting that carousels are terrible. And I did take that point as a learning going forward, because we eventually did consider turning the carousels into a feed of cards. Another question, I asked myself was, should we have pursued a different project? For example, personalized performance summary emails with CTAs. So something that we decide against doing, instead of sending weekly summary emails to marketers with call to actions to adopt features, we decided to pursue this in-app feature product instead. And then even more reflection here on the content strategy side of the house. One hypothesis I had was maybe there was just too much words just cluttering each recommendation card. And so, my internal dialogue here was, okay, maybe we can try to add illustrations and shorten the copy. And maybe we use a vertical feed of cards instead of a carousel. So the takeaway here is that design is never done. All right, that concludes the first case study, and I know that this is probably a really long video, so I'm going to actually save the analytics dashboard for a separate video and jump to the final pitch. So for the final pitch, what sets me apart? So what really sets me apart as a candidate for Acme Corporation, three things. First, I consider myself a seasoned startup designer. I've worked at 3 startups, Attentive, Quill, and Squid, which translates into over 5 years of experience tackling problems in B2B2C product companies. Number 2, I have a huge love for my eng and product teammates. In June 2022, I graduated from a coding bootcamp, and for undergrad, I also went to business school. So it really kind of puts me have the ability to speak both languages of business for product and languages of JavaScript for my eng counterparts. And last but not least, I'd consider myself a tool tinkerer and educator. I have like a YouTube channel called Maker, which you're watching this on, sharing career advice and showcasing tools or Figma plugins that improve my workflow. Finally, to just testimonials of different teammates at Attentive that have sort of really been Also people I've looked up to, people that have really believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you so much. Would love to take this time to answer any questions that you might have. All right, so that sort of concludes the presentation. I know that was probably quite long. In reality, we would only have sort of 45 minutes or so to go over two case studies. Um, Typically, showing two case studies in a 45-minute interview is a little aggressive. And so, depending on how polished I am in being able to go through one case study, um, I would sort of strategically figure out which case study would have taken more time. And generally speaking, the analytics dashboard case study would have taken more time. But overall, I hope this was helpful um, in being able to kind of see what a senior product design portfolio presentation is like. See you in the next video.